You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast mid-match special for the second test between England and New Zealand at Trent Bridge. It's been a match for batting. It's not been a match for catching. It's not really been a match for bowling either. But there's some stuff for us to talk about, and so we will talk. I'm Jack Hope, and I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. Max, how are you doing this Sunday evening?
Oh, very well, thank you. I've been in the garden doing some weeding with the cricket on in the background, which is very nice. It's very satisfying when you manage to remove a root, which New Zealand would no doubt agree with.
Very good. Before we get into the cricket, Max, do you want to give some messages to our listeners?
Yep. Head over to Twitter and Instagram at the Cricket Pod to get in touch with us over there. Like and subscribe to this video if you're watching on YouTube. Click the bell icon to keep in touch with us and our content. We'll obviously be keeping up with all the Test cricket coming out over the summer and plenty else. And if you want to support us directly, then head over to Patreon, patreon.com/the Cricket Pod for some extras there in the form of a Discord channel, exclusive shows, which we are planning to do a few of in the week. We've got a bit of catching up to do, so we'll be bashing out a few of those.
Yeah, we should be doing some this week, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
The cricket, Max, England Test team, Red Ball reset, playing New Zealand.
No, you're not allowed to say Red Ball reset anymore. Stokes doesn't like it. It's blank canvas.
Well, blank canvas.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay, England blank canvas. I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like that is not a blank canvas. That doesn't make any sense. A Red Ball reset makes sense. The Red Ball team resetting because they're bad. Blank canvas is, that would imply that none of what happened previously has happened. But when we know that it has happened, it's disingenuous. It's underway, and England are great again. Do you want to bring people? Well, they're great at batting again. Do you want to bring people up to speed on the test so far? We should probably say that we're actually doing this slightly before the end of the day's play. So it would be quite funny if in the next 15 minutes or so there were like 8 wickets or something like that to derail things. But go ahead. What's happened so far?
That would show us up for our expectation of England's batting. England are great again, despite the fact that they're still behind New Zealand in the second test. What happened is Ben Stokes won the toss on a cloudy morning in Nottingham with a slightly green tinge to the pitch and opted to bowl first, which apparently Tom Latham would also have done had he won the toss. And many onlookers suggested that they may also have done that. And unfortunately for everyone involved, Captain Hindsight was not around to inform them that was in fact a terrible idea, as New Zealand ended up piling on 553 in their first innings, 190 from Daryl Mitchell, 100 from Tom Blundell, and ultimately a very chastening experience in the field for England and their cabal of people who were unable to catch the ball again after turning things around so quickly under Baz McCullum in the first test and snaffling everything. We were reminded of everything that did happen before the Red Ball reset. Eventually, England did manage to bowl New Zealand out, and they had a tricky spell to negotiate at the end of day 2 with a mammoth target, or a mammoth first innings deficit staring at them in the face. But despite Crawley going early, they managed to make it to the end of the day, 90 for 1, and set themselves up nicely for a day 3 where Ollie Pope is now England's best number 3 ever. Joe Root is better than Tendulkar, and the rest is history until obviously we then collapse.
Yeah, well, let's start maybe with Root, who's just notched up his 150 off 184 balls. It was a bit of a meme, really, when the Root's better than Sachin chat started. But one game later, I think we need to take this more seriously, Max. It's what he is a freak. The boy is a freak. I think clearly England's best batter of all time. What's sort of been fun about this innings is how different it was to the magnum opus, if you like, of the innings at Lords, where he scored lots of ones and twos, worked really hard. And then he hit a few boundaries at the end, didn't he, to kind of pad his boundary percentage stats a little bit. In this innings, he's hit like 25 fours or something like that.
Quickest Test century. It was 118 balls, I think it was. Quickest Test century that he's hit out of the numerous ones that he has.
Yeah, you know,
now.
They say that when you get a flat one, you need to cash in Test cricket, and that is absolutely what's happening here. Like it hasn't been tricky. I don't want to take too much away from Root and Pope, obviously with his second international century, or Lease actually with his 50. But if you're going to have a day for batting, or a couple of days of batting, or 3 days of batting, it couldn't actually get much easier, I think, than this. But yeah, Root really good, and he has cashed in the most from an England point of view. What do you make of Daryl Mitchell? Let's go back a little bit earlier in the Test, and maybe catching is a talking point that we need to touch upon here. He was dropped on 3, wasn't he? And then I think he was dropped again, maybe off Leach a bit later on, and then maybe again. There's been so many runs, so many drop catches that it's kind of blurred into one a little bit. The second century for him in the series, he must be feeling pretty good about himself. I don't even think he was slated to play, was he? Henry Nicholls went down injured, or ill rather, for the first Test. Mitchell comes in, and then de Grandhomme drops out, so he keeps his space. I mean, he might have kept it anyway after the ton at Lords, but making hay after his stint in the IPL.
Absolutely, and again, just like you're saying with Joe Root, 2 very different kinds of innings. You've got the first game where everything was happening at Lords, and obviously everyone was kind of barreled out pretty quickly in the first innings. So then coming back in the second innings and putting on that impressive stand with Blundell to take New Zealand to what looked like a winning second innings total, not to be, obviously, after Joe Root's heroics, and then reverse that around in the game, the second Test, where he was much more, like you say, making hay. Everyone in that New Zealand side in the last couple of days got like 40 odd, didn't they? And they're going to be kicking themselves for having not gone on. Daryl Mitchell was the man who did go on and make a big one, and it's important as well when you've got the opportunity to not just make 100, go beyond that and make it a bit bigger, especially when you've got quite a long tail, which New Zealand do to an extent, and England definitely do. So both Daryl Mitchell and Joe Root, I think, quite nice comparisons, really. For each team and how they're anchoring their innings and how important they are to their side.
Tom Blundell as well. He picked up a century, scored a century, 106 for him. Was he out? I'm not imagining it. He was out in the 90s, wasn't he? In the previous Test.
So the two of them, they were banding about stats about record partnerships between two of the same batters in England, and their partnership this time around was the biggest by New Zealand partnership in England. So that was 260 or something. It was huge. It was a very, very long afternoon for England in the field.
From the bowling perspective for both sides. Now, I think the run rate in the match is over 4 at the moment. It's 4.26, I think, for the England innings as we speak. Partly due to Ben Stokes getting sort of 50 or 30 balls, but also because of Root, and Pope scored quite quickly as well. Same could be said for New Zealand, who didn't hang about too much. Is there anything that any of the bowlers in this match could have done differently, do you think, to perhaps make it harder? Did they pick the right team? I mean, I'm looking at this. England have got 3 bowlers who bowled more than 20 overs or more than 25 overs that went for 4+.
Yeah, well, so the things that spring to mind for me in terms of the bowling is, firstly, just the class of Jimmy Anderson. And you got a flat deck, a ball that's not really doing a whole lot for a bowler who's obviously renowned for being particularly potent when the ball does do things. And he's come away bowling 27 overs, going at 2.29 in a game where people are scoring over 4 and 3 wickets as well. I think it just hits home how good he is. And you look at, the people alongside him, Broad and Potts, expensive. Potts struggled in the same way that Matt Henry is currently struggling. And I think that is sort of where I would say you'd question some of the decisions in terms of selection. England kind of stuck, really. There's not necessarily much they could have done, because the people that they would injured. Pick, in a situation like this on the flat deck, is injured. So, obviously Mark Wood, Ollie Stone, Jofra Archer, etc., etc. New Zealand, on the other hand, have a perfect man for this position. Well, I say perfect man. I mean, I'm not sure you can be a bowler and be the perfect man for this current pitch. But if you wanted someone, as a New Zealander, Neil Wagner, you'd think would be the man to come in and try and do something a bit different on a pitch that's not offering anything. Whereas, Matt Henry is a bit more of the same, I suppose, in terms of what they currently have. And obviously with Carl Jamieson going off injured as well, that makes things a little tricky for them. Yeah,
there's something wrong with Jamieson's back. Henry, it's been a bit of a disaster, going at nearly 5 and over from his 25.
There's 2 tons up for the New Zealand bowlers now. So
he did get a wicket though. He got Alex Lees out, so it could always be worse.
Yeah,
couldn't it? For you, if you've gone for 123. Wagner, I think it's a really interesting one that they haven't gone with him. Now, I know before, there is an element of picking the team in hindsight when we talk about this, and I think actually we said that Matt Henry might be a decent option playing in England, a bit of an England specialist. But this pitch is quite similar, I would say, to the surfaces that New Zealand play a lot of their home Test cricket on. In that it is quite flat, very flat. It's very flat. Like there's not.
That's how they've built their success over the last few years, isn't it?
Yeah. So you would think that point of difference guy, could have helped. They didn't know the pitch was going to be like that, did they? I mean, we came into this game saying Trent Bridge can be very good for batting, but also, kind of tends to favour the seamers. You don't get much out of it with the spinners. And, what we've seen in the last session so far is that actually Michael Bracewell, now Ben Stokes has gone away, is looking a bit difficult to face, getting some good bounce and looking as threatening as anyone has been in this entire game. So I think it probably just caught people a bit by surprise. Flat-footed. Catching England and New Zealand back to their worst. What's your favourite dropped catch so far?
I actually, my favourite was probably not technically a drop. It would be the one that went through the slips between, was it Bairstow and Crawley?
Crawley, yeah.
And just the look on both of their faces afterwards was what made it for me. Just sheer dumbfounded bewilderment at what they'd done.
I think the Matt Potts drop off Leach. I think there's a lot going on there. One, Leach being the most unlucky cricketer on the face of the planet. Two, Matt Potts not even getting a hand on it. Like there's a great photo that was up on the BBC
photo is good
of him with his hands perfectly in position. His eyes followed the ball into the hands.
The ball by his knee.
The ball is by his knee. And then obviously he needs it for 4 runs as well to really rub salt in the wound. So that would probably be my favourite. Most annoying drop from an England point of view, probably Daryl Mitchell.
Yeah.
But both teams have been,
that's a good point. Joe Root's still in negative equity, isn't he, at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand he is. On the other hand, he once again has been the main reason that England haven't subsided. Apart from maybe Pope. I mean, I think we said that we were happy to persist with Pope from a fan's perspective in this role, and he's paid us off big time here. Is there anything he's done differently? Did you think, or is this just a good player eventually doing a good thing?
I think it's probably the latter, from what I could tell. He's put a lot of his scoring shots are those kinds of shots he normally plays, those nice looking drives. And, he got a slice of luck. He, of course, himself was dropped on 20, or was it Root that was dropped for 27? Pope was dropped on 30 odd or something like that. So New Zealand themselves have had a few issues in the field, but as Daryl Mitchell did and as Joe Root did, you have to punish the opposition when they give you an extra chance. And as Marnus Labuschagne does all of the time. So I mean, it's really nice to see Ollie Pope do that. And I suppose the only thing you might say from if you're not a buyer of Ollie Pope is that he likes scoring lots of runs and bullying people on flat pitches at the Oval, and he's just done it on a flat pitch at Trent Bridge instead.
Yeah, I think
cynical.
I think that is partly fair enough, but you do actually still need to score those runs.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes you play on bad pitches as well, where getting runs is quite difficult. So I'm not going to take too much away from, like, is this 145 worth? Is it the equivalent of a 145 at Lords in the last test? No, absolutely not. Like, it's probably worth 70 at Lords in the last test, but it's still a massive positive contribution towards the team.
Yep.
And you got to remember here as well, when he comes out to bat, England are 547 runs behind.
Yeah. In the evening.
Even if you are playing on a flatty, there's a lot of work that you need to do over a long period of time. And you know that from ball one. You're not like them in the first innings. You're an explorer setting off across the ocean, and you find out that the ocean is very calm, and this isn't going to work because oceans change, don't they? But like, what I'm saying is, Ollie Pope knew.
Well, you get still weather for a few days.
Ollie Pope knew when he went out there that really sort of 50 plus was the minimum requirement on that kind of surface, and he did deliver. And then by the time he's out, he's put England, in a position where they're probably of the three results, the draw is obviously the favourite, but of the two teams that could win, when Ollie Pope is out, England are the one most likely to win. Bairstow goes and it gets a little bit more, and then Stokes kicks on. Now there's been a little bit of a debate on the TV about Ben Stokes getting out the way he did, 46 of 33, 2 sixes, 6 fours, or playing the way he did. In fact, I think Mark Butcher was quite critical of him getting out like that. I have to say, Matt, so I didn't mind it. I would rather, I think, England lost trying to win than lost trying to not lose. Yeah.
That's exactly my feeling. I think Ian Ward may have been on the positive side in terms of what Ben Stokes was doing, and having sort of looked at it and thought about it, my main thought, I think there's a couple of things to pick up on. Firstly, like you said, it's a case of what's the best way of getting England to win this game. You need to get time back in the game because the other team has just scored 550. So if you want to win it, you've got to go out and score quickly. And he was obviously feeling it, and he was doing it well. So I mean, I think that's one thing to think about. Also, if you look at it, and Ben Stokes has scored 46 off 90, you're looking at that and saying he's done a good job. He's done exactly what his team needed. He's helped Joe Root kick on or whatever. He's helped England carry on and support them to a big total. So what's the difference between doing that in 33 balls and then giving the rest of your team more of a chance to get into a position where you win the game? And then the final thing for me is thinking about what New Zealand have got with the ball. And if he can take out Michael Bracewell, which is pretty much what he was trying to do, right? Just he took him for, what was it, 35 in 7 overs or 5 overs.
It was bad from not bad from Bracewell because he got him out, but he was getting hit.
But he went for him. And if you look at it in that kind of perspective, you can put so much pressure on someone that you're forced to basically not be able to use him, like you think he was trying to do to Ajaz Patel in the first test.
Well, he did do to Ajaz Patel.
Yeah. Well, and then New Zealand have got a real conundrum to think about. What do they do? Where do they go to tie up the runs? Because no one else has been particularly tight, so they're in a trouble there. And then you add in the prospect of Carl Jamieson being injured, and they're another bowler down. And I think in terms of game sense, it was a really positive thing to do and the right thing to do. And 46 runs is a perfectly acceptable outcome anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I think as well, there is a world where that comes off for a little bit longer and he gets 75 or 50 balls, and England would have finished the day very, very close to parity in that scenario. And basically,
which is insane when you think about it. The prospects of 1,100 runs being scored in 3 days of Test cricket is obscene.
It is the friendliest batting track I think I've seen in England for quite a long time. I was wondering actually whether there was obviously that Australia series in Pakistan recently, wasn't there, with some of the pitches there, and I was wondering whether this was quite on that level. I'd probably say no, because there have been some wickets and
there has been a bit.
Saudi
Recently today has been getting a little bit out of it.
What is definitely unusual about this pitch is how easy it is to score. Like the value for shots has been
high
through the roof. Yeah, like it's kind of a lethal combo. I think if you're a bowler, there's not really enough movement in it to get batters to, you know, put the drives away. But also, if they do connect with one of those drives, there's nothing to stop the ball. Like it just goes for four. So tricky one if you're a bowler. We've got some questions in, and we're only going to do a reasonably short show today because it's halfway through, and at the end of the match we'll do a proper recap. But we want to give people something to listen to on their way to work on Monday.
And as we found in the past, reviewing 5 days of a test in one episode is quite a lot of work.
Can be quite difficult. Yeah, it can be quite difficult. And the picture changes often as well. England have basically made it to the end of the day as we speak. But you know, what we say now about the end of day 3 could be basically irrelevant by mid-afternoon tomorrow. It's anyway. Surya says, I think Steve Smith is the best in Test cricket. But Root has been insanely awesome in the last 18 months. Do you think he can end up with a career average above 50? So I think it's back above 50 now, isn't it? I think we had another one in from the guys on our Patreon Discord about where we thought Root, Smith, Kohli, etc., Williamson ranked. I'd still probably have Smith as number 1. In my book. I mean, the geezer average is 60 in Test cricket. No, he might have played in some easier conditions for some of those matches, but it's still. I think
it's daylight, isn't it?
Yeah, of the four, I think Steve Smith is in an all-time Test 11, and I think the others probably aren't even quite in that conversation.
Yeah.
Of the 3 others, I think Root maybe has the best chance of getting himself into that situation, particularly if he plays like he has in the last 18 months. 10 centuries in his last 22 tests. England play 10 plus matches a year, or 10 plus tests a year.
He's reverse Kohli at the moment.
He's reverse Kohli. What does that mean? Oh, he's too many centuries.
Yeah.
It's someone actually put out a really funny tweet about Ollie Pope, and it was like, since Virat Kohli's last Test century, Pope has been recalled by England, scored a century, dropped by England, recalled by England, dropped by England, recalled by England, scored another century.
Excellent.
So yeah, I don't know. Where do you rank the Fab Four? I think Root looks best at the moment. I think.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of recency
Root's the
bias.
number 1. I think but the recency is 18 months long. I don't think there's another player on the planet at his level. Labuschagne is probably next best. Babar Azam has his moments, but I think, and even maybe Rohit Sharma's sort of in the ballpark. But I think Root is number 1 by a fair stretch.
At the moment, certainly I would agree. And Kohli and Williamson are struggling to match that at the moment. But in terms of all time, I think you have to say perhaps Kohli, Root, and Williamson are all kind of, give or take on a par, and then Smith is that tiny bit in front. You just look at, it's just the kind of the mental torture you get from watching Steve Smith come out to bat against you that I don't get as much with the others. I feel as though you look at them, and even though you know that you're in the presence of cricketing royalty, there's a chance that you might just nick them off in the first.
Might get them out.
Yeah, like 30 balls or something. Steve Smith just has this aura of like, we're never going to get him out once he's been in for 5 balls. And I think that's what sets them apart for me.
Yeah, there'll be like an edge that bounces 8 yards in front of the slips, and everyone will be in tears. That was our opportunity.
That was the chance. That was
it. Very much that kind of vibe. Also on Twitter, Spam says, "Is this England team batting? Is this England team batting good, or is it a flat pitch?" For someone who hasn't seen the match, are Pope and Root the new Dravid and Sachin, but better? Is Lees better than Sibley? Is this the dawn of a new England Red Bull side? I think the pitch is definitely playing a role. The Joe Root has always been, or at least, well, no, Joe Root has basically always been this good or nearly this good. So it's not that surprising that he's been getting run.
Joe Root has the ability to make pitches with life in look like this.
Yeah, this is still like as good as it has been, and it's nice to see Lees trip in. It's great to see Pope get that ton, and Stokes cameo was really good fun. It is basically the Joe Root show once again. Like we were joking about KKR being like, oh, let's do some stuff and then see if Dre Russ can win us the match. It's England test batting is basically that. It's let's do some stuff and let's see if Joe Root will put us in a position where we win the game. I'd be reluctant after the 3 innings we have seen this year to say that England's batting is now good, or McCullum and Stokes have made some big changes.
Yeah.
I think there's a possibly. I think it's really good to see Pope get some runs, and I think there's the possibility that he kicks on now, and people might retroactively put a narrative on that Brendan McCullum unlocked him.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
he
could just be a 24-year-old that got quite. I mean, like a lot of people don't make their debut till they're 26, 27 on the batting side of the game.
Yeah.
He might be someone who just has taken a while to make the step up, and this is the first of those steps. I don't know how much you can attribute to that to whatever. The falling sweep, the road ahead for the current set of openers with Root in the form of his life. How long is England ready to carry passengers at 1 and 2? Max, who are you dropping and why are you dropping them?
It's an interesting question. That I'm not dropping anyone at the moment because I think it would be harsh to drop Alex Lees after he's finally scored a 50. And Zach Crawley, I think we spoke about this the other day. You know, we don't really mind too much the idea of slightly attacking Zach Crawley, especially in English conditions where you can get maybe a bit of a head start. Alex Lees has actually looked like he's been able to unlock his game a bit and play a few more shots. He did so in this test, and in the second innings at Lords, he also did a bit before he fell. So
got 20.
Yeah, he did. He got 20, but he played some actual attacking shots, which if you compare to what he was doing in the West Indies, he scored 20. He scored 20 in about 30 odd balls, didn't he, against New Zealand? And it was taking him an entire day to do that against the West Indies. So there's perhaps something there. I think he deserves a little bit longer, but I reckon in all likelihood, he will probably be the next one to go from the top 2, but not yet.
So you're keeping Zach Crawley, is that?
For now, I mean, I can't predict the future. I think we give them both probably the summer, and if neither of them do anything, I think Zach Crawley has to perform for the entire summer. I think he has to actually score some runs on a reasonably regular basis. Otherwise, they may look for someone else. But again, you've got that sort of like you can't. I don't think you can open with Lees and Sibley, even if both are trying to be a bit more proactive and score runs. That's eating up balls for not
very
much
one-paced.
Yeah, it's a problem. And so that's sort of, if you're going to have one of them, I think you kind of need someone who scores a bit quicker. So it's difficult. I mean, the thing is, we've been carrying people at the top of the order for about 4 years, 5 years. I don't know when did Cook retire? So we're going to have to do it until we find someone new, or will these guys sort it out? We're just lucky that we've got Joe Root to fall back on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there is that. Bairstow, is he going to be? Are we going to chop Bairstow as well? Or maybe he's bad again.
Yeah, maybe.
He was good for a little while, and now he's bad. Over on Discord, and we'll wrap up. We'll make a prediction about the end of the the match. We've done Sudeep's where does Root rank among his contemporaries. Hold on, bear with me. So I've got to scroll through loads of questions about woodchucks and stuff like that. So this is people on
how many chucks could a woodchuck chuck?
Yeah, exactly.
Wood?
That is one of the questions we've been asked. And you know, sign up as a Patreon. You can participate in riveting conversations like that. There is a good one here though, Max, and this might be a good one, or might be a fun one to end the question section of the show on. If all the world's cricketers were thrown into a Hunger Games-like scenario, who would emerge victorious, and who would die first?
Oh, okay.
Tricky. Now
all of the world's cricketers.
All of the world's cricketers. I don't know if that includes us. I think maybe people who are professional cricketers.
Professional cricketers.
I've got
Jack Leach is dying first.
Yeah, you
no
know
doubt
what?
about it.
So I think in terms of people who could win, Kyle Jamieson, that he's a scary proposition, but people might gang up on him. You don't know.
Yeah.
Do you? Rahul Tewatia, great finisher. So you'd think he would have a chance of hanging around. Dhoni, obviously the greatest finisher of all time. Still technically a professional cricketer.
Dhoni would form a cult around him that would enable him to win. The question is whether someone would stab him in the back. Perhaps Jadeja would stab him in the back. So I think maybe at the last minute, Dhoni might get taken down and allow someone else to come away with the prize.
I think raw physical assets, Kyle Jamieson is my number one. On the death side, I had Zach Crawley being out first
because that happens all the time.
But Jack Leach is probably in reality a candidate to. I mean, he wouldn't even get killed, would he? He'd like fall over and break his neck. Yeah, like he'd have a bad fall, and that would be the end of him. I don't know who
scrape
else
himself on a rose thorn and end up with gangrene or some nonsense.
Who else is kind of unlucky like that? I tell you, I mean, if Kevin Peterson was still around, I think someone might kill Kevin Peterson first. I don't know if there's anyone who's sort of universally despised. Not universally despised, but rubs
I
people
can't
the
think
wrong
of
way
anyone
like him.
But yeah, quite at that level anymore.
So Jack Leach or Crawley, is who we're going for there. Right, Max. The predictions for the rest of this test. Then England are currently 80 runs behind with 5 wickets in hand. Root on 163. Ben Stokes on 24, not out. If you were going to do the match equity type thing, what's New Zealand's chances? What's England's chances? And what's the chance of a draw?
I would say it's about 80% draw.
Really? Big draw. You're a big draw, man.
75-80% draw, and then England, New Zealand. I reckon England would shade it. So I reckon like 6% England, 4% New Zealand, or
Where's the rest of your percentage? You just said 75% draw. 6% England, 4% New Zealand. That's a big amount for the tie.
I've got that wrong. I thought I'd said 90 and got confused. So if we go with 75% draw, then I reckon we're going 15% England, 10% New Zealand.
I think it's in that ballpark. I think England have got the best chance of winning because they bat last.
Yeah.
And I think New Zealand will either bat for. We'll either have to bat for quite a long time to put up a score that England won't get quite easily, which means that England can just bat for the draw. So or collapse. That's New Zealand's route to victory, isn't it? It's take loads of wickets tomorrow, bat for like all day, and then could happen. Could happen.
Yeah.
England though, if they need 280 on the final day and the pitch doesn't deteriorate too much, you'd say they have a decent chance of getting that. Like it's a pitch doesn't look too hard to bat on. Bracewell's definitely coming into the match, so he could be tricky. But England are mainly right-handed, aren't they? So maybe it wouldn't be too big of an issue. I think England have got the more routes to victory, although I do think the draw is favourite. I think like to win, what's the most likely? England bat all morning tomorrow, then they've got a small lead, and then they start pressing on after lunch and kind of hope for the best. See if they can get themselves 100 ahead. New Zealand end up batting in the final session, and then somehow
hope they've got like 30 overs to chase down something 150, something like
that. Which could happen. I saw Adam Collins tweeting that England should declare now and try and skittle New Zealand. I thought that was quite bold.
That's left field.
Yeah, he actually said it when England still had a deficit of like 120. And I don't know if I can get the tweet up. I saw it and I was like, that is crazy.
Maybe I could see the argument if England got to like parity, and then you're sort of saying, right, it's like a kind of a 2-day shootout.
Yeah.
How do you want to play it? It's not the county championship, so these sorts of things don't get arranged as much.
This is what he said. England should declare, have a dart at getting 1 or 2 of the 10 wickets they require tonight, and New Zealand will surely give them a decent target if it goes the other way. They need to win this to have a chance of taking the series. So that's New Zealand, obviously, would maybe set up a favourable...
Okay, so he's going sort of game theory approach here.
Yeah, I don't know if that is actually what people would do, though. I think New Zealand would bat until...
the game is safe.
And then they would try and bowl England out with 70 overs to go on the last day. And we've seen that story a few times.
We know how that ends.
Or to be honest, if Kyle Jamieson isn't fit, like just bat and kill the game completely. Maybe give themselves like 40 overs to get the wickets on the last day and see if they get really, really lucky. But I think probably at this point, New Zealand would take 1-1 in the series.
Yeah.
Right,
I like the thinking behind it. I like where he's going with it, but
I disagree. England are... I don't know why I just said England. Yeah, the podcast, that's what I meant to say. The podcast is over, Max. Goodbye, everyone. Make sure you click like and subscribe. Head over to Twitter and Instagram at The Cricket Pod to follow us there. I'm at JackHope0. Max is at XAM if you want to follow our Twitters directly.
Max backwards 3 times.
Yeah, it's a good handle. JackHope0 is not as good, I don't think. But there's someone squatting.
You're the 0th Jack Hope in the world.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. We'll be back in a couple of days. Goodbye, everyone.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.